You can write better than Shakespeare. 409 years ago, Shakespeare died. His work has been influential beyond the scope of imagination, both in life and in death. A couple of centuries later, Franz Kafka and Howard Phillips Lovecraft were born. Another 100 years past that, modern examples of influential artists that are present in our lives, such as Sui Ishida and the artist Tsunamoda, emerge. These artists, as big as they are, have created their own spheres. Each of the artists presented has created something unreplicable, because of who they are and when they lived. Obviously, no one is comparing Shakespeare to the mangaka Sui Ishida. People often put the older artists on a pedestal, Kafka for existential horror and Lovecraft for cosmic horror. This is not only unfair to newer artists and writers, but also presents a much bigger barrier to entry, that in reality is much smaller than most people realize. The people being inspired by these pieces of work are creating, pushing boundaries, and becoming more than what greatness is defined as. The argument that there is a ceiling at all doesn't exactly hold when seeing how modern artists are acting on their creativity. Greatness isn't defined by contrasting someone's works with the greatest in the genre. Instead, your unique voice is what gives you power in writing and art. Your personal history allows for something new in genres now centuries old. So, how can you have the same spectacular literary skills Shakespeare has? The point of this video isn't to provide a checklist, but rather to open the door to progress. This is going to be a strange source to pull from, but please stick with me. There is this UNC Chapel Hill article written by one of their writing coaches, Hope. She has a twin sister that she mentions in the article, and the whole thing is about how their college essay will be different. They are identical twins shown in the photo on screen. The point I really want to hammer the nail with is when the author gets to the point where she compares her essay to her identical twins. She found that her twins' paper was much more different than I anticipated, in her words. You'll find that your writing is going to be completely different from your friends, even when writing on the same topic. Hope noted in her article this, that even if my sister and I wrote about the same event, we chose a different takeaway from it or a different aspect of that event to write about. This is what I want to argue. Even in the same events, you have different perspectives. The event is viewed through different eyes, even if genetically you are near identical. Your eyes see something different from mine, even if hypothetically in mind and body we are technically the same person. Perhaps you think Shakespeare is garbage and already put yourself above him. Great for you in that case, love the confidence. For those who are like me and see Shakespeare to be at one of the highest levels literary merit will offer, you'll probably give up before you even start. I'm saying this because anecdotally, many of my friends that are authors or are somewhat interested in writing give up before they even start to write. Instead of acknowledging their writing is good even if it needs improvements. They see their writing through the perspective of a ladder, where the greatest in the genre is the top, and their work is the bottom, when this is simply not the case. The older artists I've mentioned are great examples of this, but not for the same reasons. Kafka and Lovecraft both have similar tales about their writing. Both were highly critical of their own works. They saw their own ladders, and Kafka was crushed by it. Lovecraft, however, found a different way to climb it, even though their stories end similarly. He sent his work out to magazines and only published one book in his lifetime. In fact, according to St. Joshi, the man who knows about Lovecraft's life the most in modern times, Lovecraft primarily wrote essays and poems in his earlier years of publishing. Despite being such a beloved author, he also primarily wrote letters even when he was writing the Cthulhu mythos. Lovecraft also turned down many opportunities to edit at the previously popular magazine, Weird Tales. He was offered to edit a companion magazine directly. It was only thanks to the many letters that he wrote that we have his work today. Lovecraft made many friends during the time, some of them even helped publish the books and short stories that were never released. One of these people that are notably mentioned in St. Joshi's biography of Lovecraft is August Derleth. A dear friend and somewhat of an apprentice, he and Lovecraft were very close. If you search him up now, he's often credited as the publisher of H.P. Lovecraft's works, but he and Donald Wandre made the publishing firm Arkham House together to make their late friend's work known. So why was this history lesson required? There's another one on the way, but let's stop here and dissect why this matters. He started the same way a lot of inspired artists and/or writers did, by reading something that interested him. I'm trying to prove that Lovecraft was a man, like any other, like you or me. The ladder he had seen was not insurmountable, but still very tall. Lovecraft was only able to become known through his friends, the connections he made. He wrote because he wanted to explore his psyche, not because of some bigger ideal. Just as someone would journal, he would write letters. His voice was gained by being himself, by writing to be himself more so than anyone else could be. Now, I mentioned Kafka earlier, but I haven't talked about him yet. This is the part where I talk about Kafka. He believed he was a massive failure. While Lovecraft himself was a critic of the highest degree to himself, Kafka was beyond a critic. He was a hater of his own work, finding everything about whatever he wrote to be wrong. His works, like Lovecraft, were only published and widely available after he died. The main point is not that they gained success through death. Rather, they both could not see the skill in their work in the same way that we often do not see the skill in our own work, being too self-critical. Kafka was especially famous for this because of his letter to his best friend, Max Brod. Kafka asked his friend to destroy his work. He also burned what many sources say to be 90% of all of his work in his lifetime. Kafka's self-criticism came to a point that when presented with his own work bound in a book made by an admirer, he stated, "It shouldn't be printed at all. It should be burnt." This quote is taken from an article written by Adam Kirsch, where he came to the conclusion that Kafka's own wants were as ambiguous as the moral implications were for Brod, further exemplifying the ladder that Kafka had in front of him. His ladder was so tall that he could not see the end of it. Despite this, the old author created stories that have gone on to be heralded as the best of the 20th century in the literary critic sphere. Self-criticism is a big part of why Lovecraft and Kafka were such strong creators, because they were able to see their faults and be able to grow from them due to the inherent human desire to be worth something. There are traits that every human wants to have: self-sufficiency and independence. Humans inherently need people, but in certain fields we can find those traits. That is what Kafka got with his writing and natural self-criticism. The skill he garnered from trying to climb his ladder clearly shows in his works. It is thanks to his friend, Max Brod, that we even get to see these works, despite what Kafka may have thought of his own work. The fact of the matter is, these artists are people. People that go day by day living a life that they have been placed into. Whether through companionship or through self-doubt, Lovecraft and Kafka were regular people that simply had an idea. Through their want to express that idea, they made what they wanted. In the human desire for quality, they made sure what they were making was, in their eyes, quality. The ambiguity of Kafka's letter proves that even he, the most infamous self-critical author in the 20th century, saw his work to be worth something. That's the kind of conviction that authors, creators, and the common person should have in modern times. This brings me to my next point. Soe Ishida. Known as the mangaka of Tokyo Ghoul, Tokyo Ghoul Re, and Chojin X. Two of those series are finished while Chojin X is ongoing. He is my modern example of the old greats. While also being heavily self-critical about his own works, he also represents the more modern era of storytelling. Information gathering has never been easier, and I was only able to make this video using Google Docs and the internet. So how is Ishida the modern example of the old greats, and what does it mean for your ability to create? The mangaka is able to show his voice off not only through the writing, but also the artistry of the images. The panels in Tokyo Ghoul and Chojin X are some of the best I have ever seen, and I have personally been reading manga and watching anime since I was starting middle school. They're beautiful, haunting, and are representative of his being, just like Kafka's existentialism represented himself. I say this specifically because of an interview Soe Ishida did. It was for a German paper, so this is the rough Google translation. As a premise, I don't really consider Tokyo Ghoul a success. For me, success is when I feel I've drawn something well. Come to think of it, I don't actually require it to be well received by society or that many people like it. For me, success is whether or not I can praise myself for it. Similar to Kafka, he also doesn't care what other people thought. He only cares about what he thinks about the works he creates. And yet Ishida considers one of his most influential works to be not a success. Mind you, this is the same series that has sold over 47 million copies worldwide. And yet, similarly to Kafka, he believes it is not a success. Ishida is so famous for his art that for the 10th anniversary of the series, he had an art exhibition in Tokyo. Not many mangaka, artists, or even authors can say that they've had close to the same opportunities Ishida creates for himself. In the same interview, Ishida also states, "I realize I actually find it rather difficult to connect with my readership." Once again, to reiterate and risk sounding like our stereo box repeating itself, these artists and authors are just like us. We create in our own ways, whether it be through text, song, image, Photoshop, Minecraft, gaming, developing. They're all impactful in ways we cannot understand because we are so self-critical. We want to grow, but we see that the art we make isn't as good as we want it to be. It isn't photorealistic enough, it isn't stylistically what you want it to be. The story you made when you were a kid is cringe, but it had something to it. Everyone's creations have soul to them so long as it was made by a human. Tsunemura is the most human song producer I have known. While singing has existed arguably as long as stories, I want to go over everything I can within this video, so that you as the audience can take away this. Literally every form of art or storytelling can have weight. No matter what you choose or what you do, you can be as good as the greatest in the genre you want to make content for. It takes time and effort, something all these artists have poured into their work, but Tsunemura is my favorite example of pouring effort and time into the creative work. He created songs by using Vocaloids. Vocaloids, for the uninitiated, are virtual singers that people can use to make their own songs using these synthesized digital singers. Tsunemura started early on with many different instruments and used the software to make music himself. In 2012, he released his debut album at the age of 17. This skyrocketed his viewer base, and he was able to garner such a reputation that he began to work with major media outlets, similarly to Lovecraft, yet much faster. His songs were a commentary on life and being, the cruelty of living and the small beauties in being alive. This wide theme allowed many people to relate to Tsunemura's work, not to mention his inherent musical skill. He made songs because he wanted to, not because he was forced to. His entire career is built off of his self-driven art, his own innate desire to create, something that was unfortunately taken away when he turned 20 in 2015. Tsunemura died, and unlike Kafka, who died of tuberculosis, Tsunemura was forced to see the latter. The latter in the digital age is much different, much more apparent and in your face than it was in the early 20th century. It is tied to the very essence of one's public persona, how high up one is in the ladder. Which is why I wanted to make this video in the first place, to disprove the latter entirely. To forego everything about comparison without first thinking about what it means to compare two artists to each other. To compare these artists to one's own skill without first knowing what it took for these artists to achieve their heights is to compare a draft to a fully edited manuscript. The draft may have personality to it that the manuscript doesn't, but the manuscript is the finished product. Tsunemura is in some eyes as skillful, if not more skillful with his lyrics as Kafka was with his words. For me, Ishida's work is beautiful and beyond skill and talent, but it isn't the same appreciation I hold towards Lovecraft's work. So how can you write better than Shakespeare? It's simple. The most important step is just doing it. Just writing to write, doing things because you want to. Create the things you want out of the tools you want to use. It doesn't matter if those tools happen to be unconventional. I personally love pixel art and use that love to make Minecraft skins. I also write creative nonfiction and fiction. Tsunemura used Vocaloids, something that until the mid-2010s I didn't even know about. Lovecraft wrote weird fiction and practically invented his own horror genre. The second step is to continue doing things because you want to. Do the creative things that please you, just like Ishida does, just like Tsunemura and Lovecraft did. If you have an inclination for it like Kafka and don't want to release, you can do that too. We live in an era where information is easily gathered and given out, one where creations can easily be seen and appreciated. Shakespeare didn't get to have what we have, in seeing motion pictures and reading stories easily en masse if we wanted. You can learn if you want to, read if you want to, trial and error your creative process if that's what you desire. People will say that your work won't amount to anything, that your nuanced words won't reach an audience, that the time you put into your work was wasted. I'm telling you it isn't. These people only achieved their success through their unique voice fostered by a life completely different from anyone around them, by being human. Even now, we can't really say anyone's life is similar to one another's because we all feel differently. As Ishida put it, he only cares about how he feels about his work. Criticism is a big part of growing, but the other big part is knowing when not to care. To be creative is to make mistakes and knowingly build from it. You can write better than Shakespeare because you are yourself. Nothing else can compare to the voice of a human attempting to convey a message or make something cool. So create. In your voice, create.